Mr. Poilievre, the leader of the federal Conservatives, called this major projects list, quote, pathetic. You said in response to it, leaders in Ottawa finally, quote, get it. What do you know that he doesn't?
I would say one of the big things that I was pleased to see is that these are the kind of projects that have historically been very hard to build in the last 10 years. LNG, you've got a couple of mining projects, gold and copper, you've got the Darlington nuclear plant, even the high-speed rail. There's a lot of difficulty in always building out on linear projects. And so I think that they've got the right target. That says to me that they're looking at the kind of things that we know are going to be productivity enhancing, generate some revenue. And that was what we wanted to see, because I think it bodes well for the projects that are a priority for Alberta, which include bitumen pipelines.
I wanted to ask you about one of the underlying conditions that you have brought up, and that is around the emissions cap on the oil and gas sector. There's a report out from Reuters that the government is considering rescinding it in exchange for other carbon reducing measures by oil companies. Was that conveyed to you by the Prime Minister?
That is what I've conveyed to the Prime Minister since I first got elected. We put forward our own emissions reduction and energy development plan, and I told former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that we were prepared to work towards a 2050 target of carbon neutrality. And instead of accepting that and trying to find ways to work together, we just kept seeing one bad law after another. What this Prime Minister seems to understand is you cannot put arbitrary interim targets in place. 2030 is only 5 years away. 2035 is only 10 years away. There just simply isn't enough time to try to achieve some of the aggressive targets that his predecessor had put forward without causing these projects either to be canceled altogether or to be shut in. So I think I'm seeing some pragmatism there that's very positive. And if we can align around our goals for both building the economy and achieving emissions reduction around 2050, I think we're going to be able to see some major projects go ahead.
If I understand one area that you both do align on, it's that emissions reductions can occur through the Pathways Alliance, allowing for either removal of the emissions cap or, for example, the construction of a new pipeline. And I just want to ask you, because the Alliance has essentially argued for it to go forward, it needs to increase the share of operating and essentially building the capital costs from 50 to 75%, the share of government or taxpayer money that it receives. What do you say to people across the country right now who are facing very high costs and taxes in their own life about more of their money going to oil companies that are already very profitable?
Well, I think I'd frame it a little bit differently. We have always let energy companies keep their own profits so that they can invest in technologies. I mean, we had a royalty framework for the Pathways group of companies where they didn't start paying royalties until they paid off their capital investment. And now that most of them are in payout, it's generating billions of dollars, not only for us, but billions in profit that are also taxed at the federal level. And so I hope people see it that way, that by allowing them to invest more of what they earn in these kinds of of emissions reducing technologies, it allows them to create a new revenue stream. And that's why I'm linking those two. The Pathways project is probably a $10 to $20 billion project, but a million barrel a day bitumen pipeline will generate about $20 billion a year in revenues. So when you have that long-term revenue stream, it just kind of makes sense to balance those two things. And I think the Prime Minister is moving in that direction and seems to agree.
But is it a guarantee if that project for Pathways goes ahead, which again, like your government is already giving between $3 and $5 billion, the federal government more than $8 billion. If that goes ahead, that necessarily means that an oil pipeline will. You mentioned a couple months ago, for example, you thought that a proponent was going to come forward any week, and none has. Even last week, the federal energy minister said no pipeline proponent has come forward.
I think we all understand a bit how pipelines are built. The way we had to make sure that the new administration at the federal level understood that is the way pipelines get built by the private sector is that the pipeline companies go out and they ask those who bring the oil out of the ground, are you willing to pledge barrels? And right now the answer is no, because there's an emissions cap, there's net zero power regs, there's a greenwashing regulation that might put them in jail for talking about their emissions reductions. And so that's why it's a package.
The pitch, though, for example, in exchange for that pipeline is carbon sequestration. And this idea that the federal government is now using, that you've employed this term decarbonized oil. Like, yes, that reduces or even eliminates carbon in the processing of it. It doesn't on the other end of things, right? When oil gets used, there is still carbon. Like, essentially, if all this stuff that you're asking for goes away, there is no more emissions reduction plan.
Well, I would tell you that one of the things that I think may not be well understood, and we're trying to make sure it is well understood, is that there's 6,000 products that come from a barrel of oil. And our heavy oil in particular, in a lot of refining circumstances, it goes to make asphalt. So if you have 60% of the product going to make asphalt, that is a non-combustion use. So if you have a decarbonized product and you're using it for non-combustion purposes, it really is just a construction material, a building material. We've funded 16 different projects to look for bitumen beyond combustion, for carbon nanofiber, for the potential for development of batteries and various other uses. And so I would say that is the way the industry is going, is how do we reduce emissions, not how do we reduce production. And I think that the history of this industry has demonstrated that they are very, very good at finding new uses for their product, and I have every expectation they're going to in the future as well.
And I do take that point, but I can't find a single scientist who says decarbonized oil is anything but a fantasy. Like, is this something you and the Prime Minister have invented to justify a total retreat on climate?
Well, I think it's a three-part approach. One is you capture the emissions at source and bury them underground to either store them or use them for enhanced oil recovery. And quite frankly, we've been doing this for decades. That is not new technology. That is something that that is well established.
But at this scale, it's very new.
Well, 40 megatons of CO2 have been captured by the project in Weyburn in Saskatchewan using captured CO2 from a coal plant. So it's been going on for some time.
But
so
yeah,
it can be done at scale.
Would be much bigger.
It's 16 billion megatons a year is what 16 megatons a year is what I've been told is going to be the carbon capture component. The other component is switching to different types of energy, and so we've been talking with the Prime Minister and our counterparts about how we can create a true interconnected transmission grid that would allow us to bring on hydro, might allow us to bring on nuclear, and we could have an integrated market. That's another way of bringing down the use of natural gas at the front end. But then also being able to do direct air capture. And we've got a major installation in central Alberta that is looking at ways that you should capture CO2 from the atmosphere. And that's what I look at as the last mile. That helps with the issue of tailpipe emissions as well. So I think that we're well advanced on all aspects of technology, and the industry seems to be confident that they can get there by 2050. So we're going to encourage them in that.
I'll leave it on that note. Premier, thanks as always. Appreciate it.